may not be less than the minimum weekly benefit amount described in Section 625.6 of Title 20, Code of Federal Regulations, or any successor thereto, and 2. The amount of federal pandemic unemployment compensation under Section 2104, and b. in the case of an increase of the weekly benefit amount after the date of enactment of this Act, increased in an amount equal to such increase. 2. Calculations of amounts for certain covered individuals. In the case of a covered individual who is self-employed, who lives in a territory described in subsection C, or a deed of Section 625.6 of Title 20, Code of Federal Regulations, or who would not otherwise qualify for unemployment compensation under state law, the assistance authorized under subsection B for a week of unemployment shall be calculated in accordance with Section 625.6 of Title 20, Code of Federal Regulations, or any successor thereto, and shall be increased by the amount of federal pandemic unemployment compensation under Section 2104. 3. The allowable methods of payment. Any assistance provided for in accordance with paragraph 1 of 2 shall be payable either as an amount which is paid at the same time, and in the same manner as the assistance provided for in paragraph 1 of I is payable for the week involved, or b. that the option of the state, by payments which are made separately from, but on the same weekly basis as, any assistance provided for in paragraph 1 of I. Page 134 Stat. 316. A waiver of state requirement, notwithstanding state law, for purposes of assistance authorized under this section. Compensation under this Act shall be made to an individual otherwise eligible for such compensation without any waiting period. F. Agreements with states. The 10th of February 2020 text H.R.748 the 116th Congress 2019 to 2020 CARES Act Congress.gov Library of Congress https://www.congress.gov/bill/116-congress/house-bill/748//text 36 309. 1. In general, the Secretary shall provide the assistance authorized under subsection B through agreements with states which, in the judgment of the Secretary, have an adequate system for administering such assistance through existing state agencies. 2. Payments to states. There shall be paid to each state which has entered into an agreement under this subsection an amount equal to 100% of the total amount of assistance provided by the state pursuant to such agreement, and b. any additional administrative expenses incurred by the state by reason of such agreement as determined by the Secretary, including any administrative expenses necessary to facilitate processing of applications for assistance under this section online or by telephone rather than in person. 3. The note. Reimbursement. Determination. Estimate. Terms of payments. Sums payable to any state by reason of such. States having an agreement under this subsection shall be payable either in advance or by way of reimbursement as determined by the Secretary, in such amounts as the Secretary estimates the state will be entitled to receive under this subsection for each calendar month, reduced or increased, as the case may be, by any amount by which the Secretary finds that his estimates for any prior calendar month were greater or less than the amounts which should have been paid to the state. Such estimates may be made on the basis of such statistical, sampling, or other method as may be agreed upon by the Secretary and the state agency of the state involved. G. Funding -1 of assistance in general, funds in the extended unemployment compensation account as established by Section 905. Aid of the Social Security Act of 42 U.C. 1105, the aid of the Unemployment Trust Fund, as established by Section 904, the aid of such Act of 42 U.C. 1104a, shall be used to make payments to states pursuant to subsection F. The tuber. B. Transfer of funds. Notwithstanding any other provision of law, the Secretary of the Treasury shall transfer from the General Fund of the Treasury, from funds not otherwise appropriated, to the Extended Unemployment Compensation Account such sums as the Secretary of Labor estimates to be necessary to make payments described in subparagraph A. There are appropriated from the General Fund of the Treasury, without fiscal year limitation, the sums referred to in the preceding sentence, and such sums shall not be required to be repaid. 2. Administrative expenses of in general, funds in the employment security administration account as established by Section 901 and aid of the Social Security Act 42 U.C. 1105, and aid of the Unemployment Trust Fund, as established by Section. Page 134 Stat. 317. 904 and aid of such Act of 42 U.C. 1104a shall be used to make payments to states pursuant to subsection F. The 2b. B. Transfer of funds. Notwithstanding any other provision of law, the Secretary of the Treasury shall transfer from the General Fund of the Treasury, from funds not otherwise appropriated, to the Employment Security Administration account such sums as the Secretary of Labor estimates to be necessary to make payments described in subparagraph A. There are appropriated from the General Fund of the Treasury. The 10th of February 2020 text, H.A.748, the 116th Congress, a 2019-2020 CaresAct Congress.gov Library of Congress. https://www.congress.gov/bill/116-congress/house-bill/748/text 37-309. Without fiscal year limitation, the sums referred to in the preceding sentence, and such sums shall not be required to be repaid. 3. Certifications. The Secretary of Labor shall from time to time certify to the Secretary of the Treasury for payment to each state the sums payable to such state under paragraphs 1 and 2. H. A relationship between pandemic unemployment assistance and disaster unemployment assistance, except as note, applicability. Definitions. Otherwise provided in this section, or to the extent there is a conflict between this section and Section 625 of Title 20, Code of Federal Regulations, such Section 625 shall apply to this section, as if 1. The term COVID-19 public health emergency was substituted for the term major disaster, each place it appears in such Section 625, and 2. The term pandemic was substituted for the term disaster, each place it appears in such Section 625. Sec. 2103. Note: 15 U.S.C. 9022. Emergency unemployment relief for governmental entities and non-profit organizations. A. Flexibility in paying reimbursement. The Secretary of Labor may issue clarifying guidance to allow states to interpret their state unemployment compensation laws in a manner that would provide maximum flexibility to reimbursing employers as it relates to timely payment and assessment of penalties and interest pursuant to such state laws. B. Federal funding. Section 903 of the Social Security Act 42 U.C. 1103 is amended by adding at the end the following: transfers for federal reimbursement of state unemployment funds. I-1. In addition to any other amounts, the Secretary of Labor shall provide for the transfer of funds during the applicable period to the accounts of the states in the Unemployment Trust Fund, by transfer from amounts reserved for that purpose in the Federal Unemployment Account, in accordance with the succeeding provisions of this subsection. B. The amount of funds transferred to the account of a state under subparagraph during the applicable period shall, as determined by the Secretary of Labor, be equal to 1/2 of the amounts of compensation, as defined in Section 3306 H of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, attributable under the state law to service to which Section 3309A, 1 of such code applies, that were paid by the state for weeks of unemployment beginning and ending during such period. Such transfers shall be made at such times as the Secretary of Labor considers appropriate. C. Notwithstanding any other law, funds transferred to the account of a state under subparagraph of shall be used exclusively. Page 134 Stat. 318. To reimburse governmental entities and other organizations described in Section 3309A(2) of such code for amounts paid in lieu of contributions into the State Unemployment Fund pursuant to such section. Deed Note. Definition. Time period. For purposes of this paragraph, the term applicable period means the period beginning on March 13, 2020, and ending on December 31, 2020. 2. Notwithstanding any other provision of law, the Secretary of the Treasury shall transfer from the General Fund of the Treasury, from funds not otherwise appropriated, to the Federal Unemployment Account such sums as the Secretary of Labor estimates to be necessary for purposes of making the transfers described in paragraph 1. B. There are appropriated from the General Fund of the Treasury, without fiscal year limitation, the sums referred to in subparagraph and such sums shall not be required to be repaid. The 10th of February 2020 text, H.